will permit Richard to be able to serve those clients with accessibility issues by directing them to the 990 office space. And similarly, any employees who have accessibility issues will also be able to work in that space as well as remotely, which they've been able to do, obviously, since even before the pandemic hit, but especially with the onset of the pandemic. There are several other real advantages to having this remote office space, not only to deal with the accessibility issues, it also addresses the staff's concern about traffic, about parking, and also addresses an issue that I believe one of the board members raised last time regarding the fact that this is in an historic preservation district. By having this additional site available for people with accessibility issues, um, Richard would be able to uh, avoid having to make any changes to the exterior of the 1327 Chicago Avenue building by having to put in a ramp and a lift and other devices like that. So the exterior of that building would continue in its current pristine state as a residence. And indeed, that would, I think, facilitate the ability to sell the property to a homeowner down the road when Richard decides to retire from the practice of law. And so it to us, it seems, as I said, to be a very elegant way to address a whole variety of issues that the staff had raised. The last point that I want to respectfully take issue with on the staff is the location of these two buildings. The 1327 building is on Chicago Avenue, and you all know much better than I do how busy Chicago Avenue is. That particular building is next door to a 20-unit condominium building. It's across the street from the Bank of America and other commercial establishments. Kitty Corner is, I forget how many stories. I think it's a 9 or 10 story apartment building. And then directly across the street from the Greenwood location is a large parking lot for the church. So there is a residence, it's true, a house next to the Greenwood address, but that's the only one. Otherwise, you've got a very sizable condominium building, and this location is on a very busy street. So it frankly is not really disturbing the residential character of that little corner of the block at Greenwood and Chicago Avenue by allowing the special use that we're requesting in terms of Mr. Shapiro's practice. He's also got the parking spots. I believe it's about 25 now. That's more than enough to accommodate the people who will be working, because many of the employees take public transportation or bicycle to work. And under the proposal that we're making to reduce the headcount in each of these two buildings, more people will be working remotely. The plan would be to have kind of a hybrid situation, much as the schools have had to do during the course of the pandemic, where people would be in the office a couple days a week and work remotely, and to rotate those who would need to be in the office. In our view, obviously the special use is a win-win in the sense that Richard would continue to be able to be a significant employer in Evanston. whose employees, albeit not every day, would be able to shop in Evanston, be able to take advantage of all of Evanston's amenities, and do so without really in any way, shape, or form negatively impacting the residential character of the surrounding neighborhood or the commercial character of that neighborhood. And as Ms. Klatz pointed out at the beginning, when this proposal was before DAPR, the vote was 8-2 in favor of recommending the special use for many of the reasons that I've pointed out. And as I had indicated earlier, Mr. Mangum, who had voted in favor at the time, and as indicated in the minutes, specifically talked about nothing on the property other than the interior use is out of character with the residential zoning. And he commended Mr. Shapiro for the manner in which he has maintained his properties. In fact, if you recall, Joe Goodman, who is a neighbor on the Greenwood side, I think spoke very eloquently about Richard as a neighbor, and specifically indicated that that he was dedicated to his employees, offered high quality jobs, very little activity at all in the neighborhood, very little comings and goings at the two buildings, the two office spaces. And you also heard from Tom Polonis, who was at the time, he may still be, the president of the Condominiums Association in the condominium building that is immediately to the south of Richard's 1327 address. And he indicated, as reflected in the minutes, that he had no issues, the Condominium Association had no issues with Mr. Shapiro in over 20 years. He's promptly addressed anything that came up with parking in the block of 20 owners, recommended approval of the special use permit, and were very fully supportive of Richard if he brought the buildings into compliance and addressed the issue of the assessment of the property, which I'll also get to in a moment. If I could then, what I'd like to do is to quickly address the special use standards and the staff's comments on those in order to be able to make sure that there's a complete record of our position in each. The first has to do with whether or not this is a listed special use for that zoning. And I think we and the staff obviously has indicated that it is. The staff expressed.
Wait, is a listed special use for residential zoning?
It is for the R5 district, which is where this is.
Okay.
Ms. McCauley. So there isn't any, because, and the reason why is it's adjacent to a business district, as indicated. Because you've got that right across the street and just down the block, that it's a business district. So there really isn't any issue in terms of whether it's a specifically permitted special use. In terms of the purpose and policies of the comprehensive plan, what I would just like to do is to point out a couple of aspects of the plan, which we think this clearly does in an affirmative way, and then address the concerns of the staff regarding potential negative impacts. The plan itself places a strong priority on retaining existing Evanston employers and businesses. Richards is one that's here. As I mentioned a moment ago, it really does. It brings employees into Evanston who shop, who work, who enjoy the amenities of Evanston. And the comprehensive plan also recognizes the commercial nature of Chicago Avenue between South Boulevard and Dempster Street. And Dempster Street is less than a block south of where Mr. Shapiro's 1327 Chicago Avenue building is located. And indeed, I believe at the corner of Debster and Chicago, the northeast corner, there are a number of commercial establishments. So the only building between the commercial establishments on Chicago Avenue and 1327 from the south is the condo building, where none of the owners have any issues. Across the street, as I pointed out, you have the Bank of America and a number of School of Rock, I think is still there. I'm not sure about that. And a number of other commercial establishments that are right there. So it's really, honestly, cheek by jowl from all kinds of commercial establishments. These aren't buildings that are in the middle and surrounded on all sides by residential property. Really, it's only to the rear on the street that is behind it, and then on Greenwood, there are a couple of residences down the block. And as I indicated, Mr. Goodman was very supportive in his comments the last time. In terms of a concern over diminution in value, if you recall, the last time we did a Zillow survey about a year ago, and there wasn't any evidence of diminution in property value over the last 5-10 years. I forget how far back, but that doesn't surprise me, and I hope it doesn't surprise you, because as the neighbors and the residents indicated, you would not know that these were not residences from the exterior. There's nothing about them that necessarily detracts from the residential nature of those buildings that are close by. In addition, Richard has 25 parking spots. Many of them are directly in the alley behind the two buildings. I believe, and Richard can correct me if I get this wrong, he's got 11 spots, I think, in Evanston parking spaces in City of Evanston garages. And so when employees do drive, they don't park all over the streets. It doesn't really cause any congestion. And frankly, there isn't really any material impact on a busy thoroughfare like Chicago Avenue in any event. And the use really is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. It can be adequately served by public facilities. Many of the employees do take public transportation to get to the office. And as we indicated last time, while we think we've got a great solution for accessibility, Richard is prepared to invest about $200,000 in equipment for fire sprinklers, automatic fire alarm, plumbing, fixtures, and the like, and electrical work too, in order to make sure that any aspect from the building division or fire department is fully satisfied by everything that he would do. I indicated also that there would not really be any undue traffic congestion. Honestly, the staff's concerns there seem to be prospective, but that number of employees have worked there for a number of years without creating any traffic congestion, without leading to any diminution in value of the property. And so given the busy nature of Chicago Avenue and the fact that you don't have clients coming to either building in any measurable numbers, and employees either working remotely, taking public transportation, those few that drive having parking spots available, traffic is not an issue, has not been an issue, and should not be an issue going forward.
Quinn?
Yes.
I just have a question for you since you're talking about parking, and I don't mean to get into a parking discussion right now, but just rather to lay out the facts. Will you just elaborate on how many parking spaces exactly are associated with both addresses?
Sure. Here, and Richard, jump in and correct me if I get this wrong. Remember, Puctel, I think there are three spots in front of 1327 Chicago Avenue. So there's 3 parking spots there. To the rear,
On the property?
Yes,
yes,
Thank you.
yeah, they're not sort of parking spots on the street. They're on the property. There are 11 parking spots behind several of the neighbors who have spots in their alley, or they've created them. I don't know if some are garages, but they may have a little parking spots on their property again.
But those are not on these properties. Those are spaces that Mr. Shapiro leases from neighbors or the condominium association.
I believe that's correct. Number.
Okay.
And I want to know, are they noticed? Do they have a sign saying that they're for you?
Richard?
no, they don't.
No, they don't. There's just some spots back there and you tell your client where to park.
No, these are for employees. The clients would only
Oh.
park in the front.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the member or chairman person, Cullen, he's never had a client overflow that I'm aware of where there's more than 1 or 2 people at a time. And especially now, it just doesn't happen at all. So the 3 spots in the front, to the extent there is a client coming, would be more than adequate to deal with that. And the employees park in the rear in leased spaces. Or, Richard, I believe you've got 11 more spots at 2 City of Evanston parking garages. Is that correct?
I think that is correct. I have 3 spots on my property in the front on Chicago Avenue, but there's also 1 spot on my property in the rear. So I have 4 spots of my own. And then I believe I rent, I would say 9 spots from neighbors, and I think the total is 24 that I have.
Okay. All right.
So can I clarify? So those 3 spots off of Chicago Avenue are a curb cut out of Chicago Avenue there. And then I'm just looking at a bird's eye view on Google Maps here. Are the rest of those bulk of ones that you're leasing from neighbors, is that from 522 address on Greenwood?
No, there used to be 1 spot, but not now anymore. The spots that are rented in the rear are 1 spot from a neighbor of mine in the condominium, which is on the west side of the alley where where the condominium 1319 Chicago Avenue is located. And the other 8 spots are on the other side of the alley, the east side of the alley, and those are for buildings on Hinman Street.
Okay, thank you.
When was the curb cut parking put in?
Okay. That curb parking is actually for the rear of the lot at 528 Greenwood. The curb cut was there before 1985 when I moved in.
And before you bought the property at 528?
Yes, I don't know how far back it goes. The property was built in 1879.
Right.
But in any event, it was already there when you bought the property.
Yes.
Okay.
It was there when I moved into 1327 in 1985. It was there.
Okay.
The extent that it is now?
It's the same. It's the same.
So I guess 24 may be the correct number. And last year, before the pandemic hit, over, I guess, 20 people took the CTA or ride sharing or walked or biked. And especially now with the increased level of remote employment, it's likely to be less than 20. But
One correction, can I just make one correction?
Sure.
I had 40, at a year or two ago, I had 22 employees in each house, a total of 44 employees. But I had several other employees who never went to the house. I had photographers and IT personnel. So I don't just have a total of 44 employees. There's several more than that, but they didn't go to the house.
But they just come and bring documentation when you need it for a file or whatever.
Yeah, they might stop by, sure.
And I suspect now if they take digital photographs, they just email it to you.
That's true.
So then if, in terms of just to finish on the special use standards, what the proposal that we put on the table would do is to not make any exterior modifications to the two buildings. And so I think the staff agrees that there wouldn't be any issue regarding the preservation of historical and architectural resources. And similarly, no issues regarding significant natural or environmental resources. And as I indicated a moment ago, in terms of other applicable regulations, Mr. Shapiro is prepared to spend about $200,000 to make sure that every issue that has been addressed regarding electrical, plumbing, fire alarms, et cetera, are taken care of. And there's no issue that Dapper had several other requirements, including hours of operation from 8 to 6. Absolutely no problem with that. No problem with the pickup time. No problem with the manner in which utilities or other services are provided. There's no issue with noise, dust, and any of the other issues that Dapper asked about. And the same is true with, as I said, with exterior alteration. Now, with respect to the assessment issue, Richard obviously is here to answer any questions that you may have about that. But he has, last year, he notified the assessor's office of the commercial use. He took that step affirmatively and is prepared.
When you say last year, can you tell me the date last year that you notified the assessor?
Yes,
Go ahead.
it was the very,
Because the issue came up in 2018 with the city. And the assessed value on these properties, the classification has remained the same from 2019 to 2020. And the assessed valuation on both of the properties has gone down from 2019 to 2020. So I don't understand how that happened in Fritz Kage's office under the circumstances if they have been adequately apprised that these are commercial properties.
the date,
Do you recall the date that you contacted them?
yes, the date that I contacted the assessor was the Zoning Board of Appeals had a meeting in February of that year, which I was unable to attend because my back was so bad I couldn't sit on a seat for an hour. The very next morning after the Zoning Board of Appeals met, a few minutes before 10 o'clock in the morning is when I called the assessor's office. And that was the date. It was the day after the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting in February of 2020, the very next day.
And can you explain? I mean, you're a tax attorney. My experience, having owned several properties in Evanston, is that the instant that you complete a renovation or there's a reclassification, the assessor's office is very, very fast to increase their assessments and to increase the tax burden on the taxpayer. I mean, with me, it seems like it was overnight. So I don't understand how, when this issue arose in 2018, how the assessed valuation has gone down from 2019 to 2020 on both of these properties, and that the classification remains in one case, single family residence, and in the other case, 2 to 6 unit residence. I don't understand that. You're a tax attorney. You must have some pretty strong contacts in the assessor's office to whom you could have very personally said, this is an important issue that I need to address. It
Well-
probably has legal ramifications. It certainly has financial ramifications for the county and specifically for the city of Evanston.
Well, when I called you're right, I have some specialized information. So when I called the assessor's office on that day, I didn't just call the assessor's office. I specifically called the direct number for the omitted assessment department, which is the relevant department. I have telephone records from T-Mobile showing that I made the call. I have the name of the woman I talked to. I don't have it in front of me, but I have it. And I don't have any.
Have they answered you back yet, Mr. Shapiro?
I'm sorry?
Have they answered your request? Have they called you? Have they contacted you?
No, but I did call them back again a second time. I wasn't able to get through, but I got a message. I got a recording and I left a message a second time.
When was that?
That was weeks ago.
Weeks ago. Okay.
Maybe. a
Yeah,
month.
these explanations coming from a tax attorney whose profession over the last 30 years has been to deal with the assessor's office, to be unable to notify them of a major, we're talking for 30 years,
I
a
did-
difference of 10% versus 25% tax on assessed valuation.
I did notify.
And well,
I did-
that's hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Evanston school systems, et cetera, that have been lost over these 20 some odd years. And to me, that is egregious from a tax attorney. And so the money that you're willing to spend on these properties, having gone through this packet, it just keeps feeling like, from the engineering reports to all the rest of it, like there's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And that's because it is. All of this money that you do not want to spend, and I agree with you, to alter the exterior of the homes, but the money that you're willing to spend for fire and safety, in my mind, would be so much better spent leasing office space in Evanston. And there's quite a bit of office space in Evanston available for lease.
Right now. Yes.
Yeah, and so, it just seems to me, even if it's for a few years' time, Mr. Shapiro, that converting all of the time and money and effort into, altering these abodes to become true commercial spaces, but without doing the required building alterations for handicap accessibility or for ADA compliance, could be so much better spent, renting a floor of an office building, and you probably get a fairly good deal at this point. And then, return these properties to the rent rolls as what they are, and settle up with the assessor for the 30 years that they've been misclassified. That's my opinion. I'm terribly disturbed by the fact that this issue came up in 2018 and the assessed valuations have gone down from 2019 to 2020.
Well,
Do you have an answer for that?
yes, I had nothing to do with the assessor's assessments. I don't have anything to do with the assessments he gives. I didn't appeal the assessments he gave. I have nothing to do with those assessments, but there's something else.
But you intervene to alter assessments for 2,000 Evanston clients on a regular basis, but you could not intervene at the assessor's office to correct what may be a legally perilous misclassification on your own part. This is a knowing, clearly a knowing misrepresentation. of these properties for tax purposes.
Well, I don't think that that's necessarily true, Member Macaulay.
No? Can you
No,
explain that, why that's not true?
I don't believe that any property owner has an obligation to change an assessment that's already been there. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, Mr. Shapiro,
I'm so sorry. That is not, I perfectly understand, Mr. Quinn. If somebody is, they really don't know. I mean, believe me, I've gone through, shifting properties from I-2 to MUE and all the rest, and then gone back to the assessor and begged them, we're not commercial. I proved to you that we have residents in these properties and that it's got an MUE zoning designation, and so it should be 212. It should not be, commercial. And that's very, very difficult. But because they are on it instantaneously when they know that a property class has changed. And so I do believe that a tax attorney is responsible both to the city of Evanston and the schools of Evanston and the parks of Evanston, as well as to the general public, to be forthright in terms of what their taxable situation is. It's not like a typical resident who might overlook the fact that their property is misclassified for tax purposes. Mr. Shapiro is a tax attorney.
May I respond?
And that is his specialty, is intervening to see that assessed valuations are fair and correct.
Thank you, Mary. Please respond, Mr. Shapiro.
Yes, thank you. First of all, let me say that I am so sorry that I should have done this before. And I regret not doing so sooner. And I'm really, really sorry. But the explanation is that the fears.
It was too good a deal to pass up.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that once it was revealed to be the case that you could have acted with greater dispatch than
Well,
calling the assessor's office and leaving a message.
I haven't finished because I speak slowly and I pause between my answers and what I'm saying. I'd like to be able to finish.
Okay,
You
I'm
have
sorry.
the floor, Mr. Shapiro. Mary, let's hear what he has to say.
Thank you. The fear of losing my livelihood surpassed the fears that the government uses to exert its control. That was enough right there to paralyze me in fear and not do anything to draw attention to myself. But it was more than that, because it's not just my livelihood, but if not literally, figuratively, it's my life or my way of life. I don't have a wife and children. I don't have a family. I don't take vacations. I've had two total knee replacements. I've had operations on both feet. I have back problems. And if I don't travel to go on, if I don't want to travel to go on vacation, I don't want to, I really don't want to travel to go to work. So I wasn't going to do anything that would put me in a position where I could lose everything. I did absolutely nothing until after the Zoning Board of Appeals last meeting last year in February. At that point, I went forward. I said something to the assessor, but that's why I didn't say anything before then.
Well, I understand that human emotion, certainly. But
mean-
after it was, I certainly do.
It was,
You know, it started as a simple venture. It turned into something you had not expected.
yes,
And then it was where it was located. And, you know, I sympathize with the fear that you had of the government coming in and suddenly making it an unaffordable enterprise for you. I've had the experience. But
not unaffordable, but making it so that I couldn't be there anymore. So I couldn't live next door to where I work. And that's my life. That's my lifestyle. And as I said, it's more than just losing my livelihood, although losing my livelihood would have been enough. But it's bigger than just that. There was no way I was going to be able to jeopardize everything. I was afraid.
Sir, it's reported in our notes that an anonymous complaint revealed this office use in January of 2020. And you waited until February to talk to the assessor's office about it? I just wanted clarity on it.
2018.
Yeah, 2018.
Yes, I told you, I called the assessor's office in 2020, the day after the zoning board of appeals meeting in February.
2 years after the city had asked you about it.
Yes.
I just want the timeline corrected, that's all, sir. Any
May,
questions
may
for
I
this respondent? Yeah, please.
may I interject? I'm sympathetic to everything that's being said here, and with all due respect for all parties, I'm not seeing exactly how Mr. Shapiro's relationship with the city is relevant tonight. Like, we're trying to determine whether or not to grant him this special use, right? So unless I'm
Yeah.
missing something.
Well, Max, the part of the contingency in the notes from city staff is that the special use would not be granted unless Mr. Shapiro had properly reported the misclassification to the county assessor's office, and that the issues pertaining thereto, the financial issues, be resolved. And so it is pertinent in that regard. If we're going through this exercise to grant a special use for something that becomes unfeasible because Mr. Shapiro doesn't know what the assessor is going to do because this still has not been correctly recorded, then we're going through a futile exercise.
May I just interject, Member McCauley, too, that as we indicated last time, and as Ms. Krugly's letter indicated, Richard is fully prepared to make peace with the assessor's office and to address whatever the assessor determines. So I just want to clear that as he pointed out, being able to live next to where he works is something very important. You correctly noted he's willing to spend $200,000 to do the upgrades in 1327 in order to be able to walk that short distance from the condo to where his office is. And he's also willing to do whatever we need to do with the assessor's office to get their attention. He's tried, he can do more, and he will do more to get that in order to be able to continue, assuming the ZBA recommends a special use, to be able to work next door to where he lives. So he doesn't, he pointed out, his mobility issues himself are not great, given his current health and age. So you might point out, as you did, that financially, maybe it doesn't make the most sense in the world, but to Richard, it really is very important to be able to do this. And that's why he's taken the steps to rent space at a satellite site so that the accessibility concerns of the city can be addressed, so the intensity of use can be reduced, so that the traffic issue, if there is one, we really don't think there is, but it could be ameliorated. He's willing to take all those steps and to face the consequences with the assessor in terms of or assessment reclassification in order to be able to continue to have his practice next door in a way that Dapper recognized, his neighbors recognized. He's a very, very good neighbor and somebody who is a credit to that neighborhood and to the community. And he wants to make good on the mistake with respect to classification, and he's prepared to do that. So we recognize, members' anger about that. It's certainly understandable, but he is prepared to make good on that whole classification issue.
Given this issue, staff would recommend that the zoning board, whatever recommendation is made, that they include a condition that the applicant provide proof in writing of alerting the assessor's office to this issue, including the dates that the properties first shifted to commercial use. And if those dates could be provided on the record now as well, then I think that gives everyone a comfortable sense that it is proceeding as it should.
Well, I would take it one step further, Melissa, and say that Mr. Shapiro provide proof in writing that the assessor has responded to him and that the assessor acknowledges, because Mr. Shapiro is right. You can go to the assessor's office when you want a reduction and you won't hear back for a really, really long time. But I think that in a matter of greater urgency, you can get the attention of someone in the assessor's office who will give you written acknowledgement that we have gotten, this correspondence indicating these are the circumstances, and we are in process of letting you know what the back taxes are that are owed.
And
That can be one of our conditions.
Yeah,
And
that's
for-
what I'm saying, that not just that we have proof in writing that a contact has been made with the assessor's office, but we have proof in writing that the assessor has acknowledged such correspondence in detail.
So if I
And-
can clear, in other words, a receipt, something that shows that the assessor's office has got it, it's been received and
Correct.
sure. Okay.
And the applicants can work with me. I have some contacts at the assessor's office, so I'm happy to help make that happen. And just some additional information for the applicant. Just bear in mind that assuming approval and you make the life safety changes, the permits for those changes will go to the assessor's office and you will then be reassessed again. So just FYI.
Okay,
And if you can provide for us the dates that the properties switched to commercial during this hearing, please.
no, I can't give you dates during this hearing because I'm not prepared. No, I don't know.
Or, I mean, do you know rough years? We just want to establish that what gets sent to the assessor's office is also what's discussed tonight.
Sure.
Melissa, it was in the documents. One of the engineers who had made, in the documents that were provided in the packet, had noted that for alterations of life safety systems, they had contacted the state of Illinois. And since this was not a new occupation of the property, since it had been an office in this manner since like 1998 or it's been over 20 years, that's for 1327. So that's in the documents in the packet. So it should be consistent with that information.
Right.
And
Richard,
I think-
also, it says in the packet that you won't get an occupancy certificate without it. So,
Right.
right, you're gonna have to provide that proof.
Mr. Shapiro, earlier when we were talking about the curb cut, I thought Greenwood Street property in 1985. Did I mishear that?
No,
I'm
Vic-
sorry, can you ask me again?
You cut out, Jill. Could you repeat your
thought
question?
Um, perhaps I misheard, but I thought when we were talking about the curb cut, that the Greenwood property was purchased in 1985. Did I
No.
mishear that?
No,
Next
you're confused or mistaken. I moved into 1327 Chicago Avenue as a renter
Mm-hmm.
in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
The property was purchased in 1998.
Okay.
And the Greenwood property was purchased at a foreclosure sale in 2013.
Okay.
And I think the practice was started there in 2014.
Okay. Thank you.
So that, Melissa, I think that gives you some rough dates, more or less.
Okay.
Can you clarify real quick when you said the property was rented prior up until 2013? Was it rented for the office use or as the residence?
I'm sorry, what property are you talking about?
1327, Richard.
And what is your question?
When you were renting it prior to owning it, so prior to 2013, you were renting it as a residence or for the?
No. Prior to 1998. The property at 1327 Chicago Avenue was purchased in 1998.
Okay, and the other property,
Was
Was
purchased in 2000.
2013.
and you didn't rent it before 2013?
No,
Okay, I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
misheard.
but
Okay,
that was 1327. He rented from 85 until he purchased it in 1998 and converted it to office use exclusively.
okay, so 98, when it was purchased, that's when it was transitioned to the office use. Correct?
Is that correct, sir?
I don't know if it was I would, no, I'm not, I don't know that that's exactly when it transitioned, and I'm not prepared to answer that tonight.
Well,
But when
that's
you
what
moved in, did you move in as your residence or as your office?
Well, I didn't purchase the condominium next door as a residence until 2002. So between 1998 and 2002, I was still living there.
but it was mostly office. According to you.
Yes, yes.
And according to the documents submitted to the state to justify why you wouldn't have to do the complete overhaul to ADA, it was substantially all office from 1998 forward, just according to those documents that are in the packet.
I have a bedroom for myself, but it was mostly office, yes. I still have a bedroom for myself.
Okay. Any other questions about this item? Okay, so I want to ask about the ADA improvements. On March 5th, you provided supplemental information, but you did not give us alterations for the ADA improvements at 1327 as you previously proposed at the last meeting.
In that, if I could address that, Chairperson Cullen, we determined that a better solution, we thought, would be to have a satellite site where anyone who had an accessibility issue, whether an employee or a client, would be able to come. And so that's where 990 Grove, the space that Mr. Shapiro is, he's actually negotiated with the landlord there to get the space as soon as, if he gets approval from the city council, to be able to relocate employees in order to reduce the intensity of use at 1327 and 528, and to also have that as a place where, whether it's a client or an employee who has accessibility issues, can work. So the idea was to avoid having to do the alterations at 1327, the ramp, the lift, and all of the other things that would be necessary, in order to preserve its residential character for after the time that Mr. Shapiro decides to retire and not use that property anymore for office purposes. We thought that it would make sense and would also address some of staff's concerns over precedent and special use extending beyond the time that Richard would use it as a place for his law practice. And so we thought the best way to address the accessibility issues was to actually find ADA compliant space and rent that space.
And how large is the space that is contemplated to be rented at 990 Grove?
370 square feet.
And it's only 650 feet, I think I read, from your residence, correct?
No, it's about 3 blocks, 3 or 4 blocks.
Is that a walkable distance for you, Mr. Shapiro?
No, I would drive.
Okay.
Because at our last meeting, what we asked that you do is include consideration of an off-site ADA compliant office, such as 990 Grove, or ADA improvements are required, including 1 ADA parking space, clear path to entry, a ADA lift or ramp, door lever, 1 accessible office area and conference area, and 1 ADA bathroom in a manner similar to the preliminary ADA site plan that you submitted on February 11th, 2020. That was at the last meeting.
Right, so we actually chose the first option.
Which is just to go to 990 Grove and make no ADA compliant improvements at these 2 locations.
Well, the idea was to be able to address the fact that there's so few clients who come in, to be able to have a location where those clients could go if they wanted to come, and to have any employees who had accessibility issues to be able to go to 990. We saw those as 2 alternatives. And so we thought that the best alternative to address a number of the staff's concerns was to rent additional space to address the accessibility issues.
So at 990, all the accessibility issues are included, like the parking space, the clear path to entry, the lift, the door lever, the bathroom, all of those things are included at 990.
That's what the building owner has indicated to us.
Any other questions for this respondent? We're going to move on to testimony in a minute. Carol, do you have anything to say? No. Okay. All right, so let's move on to testimony. I assume that there are people here that want to talk about this case. Is there anyone here who would like to comment? So Melissa, you gave us last minute, you gave us some letters of approval. The things.
I don't remember offhand. I emailed just before the meeting and there were at least 2 public comments for this case.
There were quite a few that I looked on the email. Okay, well then, if there's no one in the audience that wants to talk about this, we're going to close the record and the board will discuss. Thank you so much. Board members, your ideas.
So oddly, I think that I hate to put a long-term Evanston resident out of his business. I hate to see employees, longstanding employees, be uprooted. I have to say that it would be my strong preference, but of course this is, just a preference, not in relation to the special use terms, that you go to 990 Grove and rent a whole lot more space and combine all of your office operations in office space in Evanston and return those homes as homes to the rent roll as they are and settle up with the assessor's office. But that said, I think that the accommodations, I mean, I would make it also a contingency. You know, my first contingency would be that you have proof in writing from the assessor's office that they are aware that since 1998, 1327 Chicago Avenue has been essentially a commercial property, and 528 since 2013 or 2014, whenever you started office operations there. You may have bought it and done some other work, but I would want proof in writing that they knew that and that they were acting on that to give restitution to the city of Evanston as a contingency. But I would also make as a contingency that the office space at Grove, that we have proof from the owner of the 990 Grove building that it is a fully ADA compliant building, and that that any special use, our recommendation be contingent on your maintaining a lease at 990 Grove. Since you have been operating an office there for 23 years almost, I don't see that the impact is so terrible. I do think that there's a negative impact in terms of parking spaces that Evanston residents are on waiting lists for, that your employees are taking. But I think that can be mitigated over time. Otherwise, I think that for the length of time that you still have to practice, I would not want to deny your continuing at that location, provided that there is restitution made to the city of Evanston. That's my feeling on it.
Thank you.
Melissa, could I ask a clarifying question? When we place conditions such as this on, based on the assertion of the reduced number of employees, the maintenance of a lease at Grove, how is that tracked or confirmed in the future?
I would recommend that any condition require the applicant to provide yearly proof of a lease. Otherwise, it would be extremely difficult for staff to track.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Melissa, can I ask another question just about implications of the decision tonight? Currently, Mr. Shapiro is operating his business and he's requesting the special use. As long as this goes on, or in terms of when this proof has to happen, he's going to continue to operate, right? And then what are the...
Well, Melissa, are those properties still currently in operation as office spaces, even without the special use granted? Is that...
My understanding is that they are, and typically that would be allowed so long as the application is in process. My understanding is that it is being used as an office, but at a reduced rate due to COVID. The city did attempt to inspect the property, I believe, in the fall, just to gain an understanding of how it's being used at this point, and was unable to do so due to some COVID cases at the properties.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Carol.
It's a question to staff. Melissa, granted a special use for a time, is this possible? Can we say that it is linked to Mr. Shapiro's retirement? What happens after a special use is with a time limit?
You can condition it to the current property owner. So at the time that Mr. Shapiro sells the properties, they cannot be used again as office use.
They'll
Again-
revert back to historic homes.
And again, that is something that would be difficult for staff to track. Keep that in mind. I'm not sure how exactly we would do that.
But
Yeah, I
is
mean,
this
if
only
it's this,
connected to sale of the property to another person, or there could be other time limitations for the special use?
There could be other time limitations. If, now that I'm thinking it through, if it's tied to the sale of the property, then you could require as a condition that that be recorded against the property, and that way it will come up when there is the sale. It will come up on a deed search and be required that way.
Thank you.
Jill, do you have anything to say about this proposal?
I mean, in general, I think Muffy very well mirrors what my thoughts are, that I'm disappointed that this is the situation that we're in, with the conditions that Muffy has laid out. I think I could be in favor of moving forward reluctantly.
I would ask if the board could reopen testimony. We do have someone from the public who has a comment, and I think it's just due to our digital meetings that it was missed earlier.
Okay, I'm going to reopen testimony for this one comment. Is this guy that Joe's iPad? Is that who it
Yes.
is? Sir, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, I apologize for being late, and I'm going to keep my comments short. I apologize for having a technical glitch. Anyways, my name is Joe Goodman. I own the apartment building at 522 Greenwood, which is adjacent to Richard's building. It's a family building that was built by my father. I've been involved with it since I was in high school. Richard is the best neighbor that we've ever had. When I first came there, it was that Chicago Avenue was owned by the Lake Bluff Children's Home, and the police were there all the time. Anyways, it's and Richard's operation, good jobs with people that are utilizing public transportation, is just the sort of operation that the city of Evanston should be supporting. He rents 11 parking spaces, one of the big houses on Hinman that has a broad, I don't know, 100 feet of frontage on Hinman. He rents the whole, gravel back of her alley. She's probably delighted with the situation. Those spaces, a lot of times they're not even fully utilized. So it doesn't seem like he's providing more than enough parking. And I admit it's a little unconventional, but the bottom line is he's providing good jobs, and it's a green operation, and I think that worthy of making a little bit of an exception. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can you say your first and last name and address for the record?
My name is Joe Goodman. I'm a lifelong Evanston resident. I live at 2444 Hartree, and I own the building that's contiguous to Mr. Shapiro's at 522 Greenwood. And also I have a building across the street at 1326 Chicago Avenue.
Thank you. Okay, before I close the record again, anybody else want to speak in support or against this proposal? Anybody? Going once, twice? No, Mr. Werdemeyer, you don't want to speak? Okay, thank you. All right, so we move back to the public comment of the board. Anybody else on the board have a comment about this?
I can.
Carol, please.
So here is my sincere opinion. I think that this is precedental, and we have to be careful with such special uses. In the case, I would say with the record in our decision that this is not inheritable and not sellable, if I correctly use the words. My point is, it is only with the current owner and with the current business, I would agree to grant the special use. I don't want this to continue in the years forward after this business is closed or after the property is sold. So these are my two, I would say, requirements to agree with the special use. Thank you.
Thank you. So whoever does the motion, please know that we have what Carol is talking about, what Mary McCauley is talking about, and we also have these considerations, that there is a lease be shown at 990 Grove that shows that everything is ADA compliant. Hours of operation for on-site employees shall be limited Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Deliveries shall be limited to Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. The number of employees present on site shall be limited to 15 in each structure, in addition to the notice of Cook County and the lease at Grove Street. Now, myself, I think that these two properties would be best returned back to residential. They're beautiful historic homes and they're in a historic home district. I think we have a glut of office space in downtown Evanston, and that to rent more of it would be a boon as we try to recover from the pandemic. But I'm willing to go through these special use variances and talk about what we're gonna do. So I would be in support if we had all of these conditions on here, if it was limited to Mr. Shapiro's ownership, and if it's kept at the same level of use that it's kept at right now. So that I'm going to move on to reading the special use standards. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, Violetta, just, and forgive me for not having a strong business acumen on this, but are there any nuances of this, non-transferability of the special use that we should also consider? So I mean,
like
sale of the property, sale of the business, but presumably the business could continue past Mr. Shapiro's involvement, direct involvement, employment, should we say, without meeting one of those conditions.
Well, and that's a question I have for you, Melissa. Can we make it a condition of the special use recommendation to actually put something on the title to the properties that indicate these properties are operating as businesses under a special use with the city of Evanston that is non-transferable, so that we know that at the very least upon sale or transfer that the special use ceases, and that people know that they have to go through the title company and they would know that the special use, that they can't operate a business there.
How enforceable is that?
It's enforceable. Special uses can be tied to the property owner or the operator if conditioned in that way. And the zoning board recommended that condition on the cannabis dispensary not long ago.
Yeah, we did on Howard. Yes.
Downtown.
Downtown. Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else from the board? Yes, Max?
Yeah, I'll just say that I think I'll be in favor of approving this with conditions like a lot of the members have said. I'm sympathetic to not wanting this to be a precedent, and I would feel differently if I would feel it would be appropriate to take a harder tone if the infractions were more egregious. But if you look at the geography of the layout of the neighborhood there, when you walk by, it does feel pretty commercial. And if you look at how the other zones happen, the residential area that he's in kind of juts in abnormally from the east in order to abut up against Chicago Avenue. So it's not, what I'm trying to say is that any kind of effects of like the commercial nature of it kind of blend into the current status, such that I don't feel, when I'm looking at the special use standards, I don't feel there's anything actually really egregious going on. That said, I definitely want this kind of exception to end with Mr. Shapiro's ownership of the business and at that location.
Thank you, Max. Anybody else on the board? All right, let's move on to the special use standards. We are going to have a vote on if the standard has been met or not with each standard. This is a difficult case, and I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to say what they want to say. So are we going to call a roll, Melissa, or are we going to just, okay, so you'll call the roll. Okay. For the ZBA to recommend that the city council grant a special use, the ZBA must find that the proposed special use is one of the listed special uses for the zoning district in which the property lies. Before I take the vote, I want you to know per zoning code section 6873, an office use in an R5 district is an ineligible special use when adjacent to a business district. The subject property is adjacent to the B2 business district to the west across Chicago Avenue. Melissa, please call the roll.
Chair Cullen,
This standard has been met.
Member Pucktell,
Standards met.
Member Zordan,
Standard is met.
Member Macaulay,
Standard is met.
and Member Miranchev.
Yes.
Okay, so this standard has been met. Number 2, it complies with the purpose and policies of the comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance. The comprehensive general plan encourages the protection of residential neighborhoods from negative impacts. The lack of significant on-site parking and ADA accessibility enhanced by 15 employees in each building is not appropriate when surrounded by residential zoning and uses on 3 sides. The potential for negative impacts in such a situation is high. So, Melissa, call the roll.
Chair Cullen,
This standard has not been met.
Member Pucktell,
I'm not sure to answer this. It's not been met, which is why we're putting the condition on ending it after Mr. Shapiro's ownership. Can I say that?
You can say that it has not been met, yes.
Member Zordan,
Has not been met.
Member Macaulay,
In light of the numerous parking spaces that Mr. Shapiro has secured, in light of the longevity of his business at this location, I'm going to say that the standard has been met.
and Member Miranchev.
I would say that the history shows that this standard has been met. There is no significant impact on the neighborhood by the business. For me, this has been met.
And use standard number 3, does not cause a negative cumulative effect in combination with existing special uses or as a category of land use. Since the proposal includes 2 single-family residential properties, each with 15 office employee and little on-site parking, the cumulative effect of both properties together within a residential district may be a negative cumulative effect. Go ahead, Melissa, call the roll.
Chair Cullen,
This standard has not been met because it may cause a negative cumulative effect.
Member Pucktell,
The standard has been met.
Member Zordan,
The standard has been met.
Member Macaulay,
Has been met.
and Member Miranchev.
Has been met.
Number 4, does not interfere with or diminish the value of the property in the neighborhood. Moderate intensity commercial office use immediately adjacent to residential use may diminish the value of property of adjacent properties. Additionally, the cumulative 22 parking spaces in the neighborhood that are leased for this may cause parking issues for the residents of the area and may therefore diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. Melissa, call the roll.
Chair Cullen,
I'm going to say since he rents so many parking spots, this standard has been met.
Member Pucktall,
Standard has been met.
Member Zordan,
Has been met.
Member McCauley,
Met.
and Member Miranchev.
Yes.
Standard number 5, it can be adequately preserved by public facilities and service. Yes, both properties have adequate service. If approved, both structures should be conditioned to upgrade water service or a fire sprinkler system. Call the roll, Melissa.
Can I ask a question? Melissa, I'm sorry. Since this has been ongoing since 2018, you were not able to go in and inspect the properties. There's been a commitment to do the fire safety upgrades. Can we put a time element on that?
In conditions, maybe?
Yes, the zoning board has conditioned time for when a permit should be pulled and when the work should be completed by for
Okay.
projects.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Okay, so could you call the roll for number 5?
Chair Cullen,
If he puts in this adequate safety, the standard has been met.
Member Pucktall,
Standard has been met.
Member Zordan,
Yes, with the required upgrades, the standard has been met.
Member McCauley,
Yes, with upgrades.
and Member Miranchev.
Yes, with the upgrade.
Number 6, does not cause undue traffic congestion. The addition of 22 employee vehicles in the area likely increases traffic congestion incrementally. But since parking spaces are leased and vehicles are traveling to an exact destination, overall traffic congestion is not significantly impacted by the use. Melissa, call the roll.
Member Cullen, Chair Cullen,
This standard has been met.
Member Pucktall,
Has been met.
Member Zordan,
Has been met.
Member McCauley,
Has been met.
and Member Miranchev.
Has been met.
Standard number 7. It preserves significant historical and architectural resources. No exterior modification are proposed to either single-family home structure, which are within the Lakeshore Historic District. However, if the ADA improvements are required at 1327 Chicago Avenue, exterior modifications will be made, including widening a sidewalk, replacing the stairs and landing at the rear, adding a left and a new door with a lever handle. Can you call the roll, Melissa?
Chair Cullen,
I think that this standard has been met since they have decided to go to 990 Grove.
Member Pucktall,
Has been met.
Member Zordan,
Has been met.
Member McCauley,
It has been met with the contingency of the 990 Grove lease verified.
and Member Miranchev.
Yes.
Standard number 8, preserves significant and natural and environmental resources. There are no natural or environmental resources, so I would like to skip the vote for this and say it's non-applicable. Number 9, complies with all other applicable regulations. The use will comply with all other applicable regulations, including building codes and fire codes for the change of use occupancy. While not required by code, the building official and some DAPRS members request ADA accessibility at 1327 Chicago Avenue so that there is an accessible entrance, office, and conference room for an employee or client with mobility issues and a bathroom. The applicant has provided a plan for the ADA improvements by moving to 990 Grove and prefers not to make any ADA modifications to the structure and instead requests the lease at 990 Grove. Call it roll, Melissa.
Chair Cullen,
Because of 990 Grove, I think that this standard has been met.
Member Pucktall,
Has been met.
Member Zordan,
Met.
Member McCauley,
Has been met.
and Member Miranchev.
Yes.
Okay, with that, I am going to ask for somebody to make the motion, and don't forget the conditions. There are 6 of them.
I'll make the motion if you give me a little help with some of the conditions.
Certainly,
Since
I have
my-
notes.
Are you prepared, Max? Can you make the motion?
I don't have the notes as well as you probably do.
Okay, well, I'll give it a go. So I propose that ZBA recommend to City Council that they approve the special use for 1327 Chicago Avenue and 528 Greenwood with the conditions that at the City Council meeting, Mr. Shapiro have proof that he has contacted the Cook County Assessor's Office and that they have replied with acknowledgement that 1327 Chicago Avenue has been in office since 1998 and that 528 Greenwood has been operating as an office since its purchase in 2013. Number 2, that Mr. Shapiro show proof that he has a lease on 990 Grove and that it is a fully accessible ADA compliant building, and that lease be verified by the city on an annual basis. Number 3, that the hours of operation run from, is it 7 a.m. till 6 p.m.?
That's what we have.
7 a.m. until 6 p.m. and that occupancy of the structures be limited to 15 employees per building. Number 4, help me
Deliveries.
out, Violetta, what is it?
Deliveries is 7 to 6.
Deliveries take place from 7 to 6.
And I think that's it. How about you, Melissa, in your notes?
Did we
And
cover everything?
does this cease with a change in ownership?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
That the special use be confined and recorded on the deed of both of the properties to the ownership of Mr. Richard Shapiro.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Aye. Any opposed?
Could I just ask a clarifying question? Because a few of us have said that we did not meet standard 2. So Melissa, does that require us to vote a certain way or no?
If you feel that the conditions listed make it so that standard number 2 is met, then you can vote to approve. If you feel that those standards do not change that, then you should be voting no.
Okay. I'll vote in favor then. With the
Maybe we'll do a roll call. I vote in favor.
Let's do a roll call just so we're all clear,
Yeah, let's
since
do
we
it.
did all the others.
Yes,
Chair Cullen,
in favor.
Member Pucktall,
Favor.
Member Zordan,
favor.
Member McCauley,
Yes.
and Member Miranchev.
Yes.
Mr. Shapiro, your motion passes. See Melissa about next steps, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Okay,
Good evening.
good evening. Okay, let us move on to 1101 Church Street. Is the respondent for 1101 Church Street available? Is he
Yes,
here?
good evening.
Good evening, okay. Melissa, will you read this case into the record?
1101 Church Street, Christopher S. Dillion, joint venture partner, submits for major zoning relief to construct a 4-story rear addition and adaptive reuse of an existing religious institution structure in the R6 General Residential District. The applicant requests 24 dwelling units plus 6 IHO bonus units for a total of 30 dwelling units, where 15 dwelling units are allowed. Zoning code section 6884C. 78.6% building lot coverage where 65% is permitted, zoning code section 6886. A 0-foot street side yard setback to match the existing structure where 15 feet is required, zoning code section 6887A2. A 1.5 foot rear yard setback where 25 feet is required, zoning code section 6887A4. 0 feet for open parking in the interior side yard where 5 feet is required, zoning code section 6887C3, and 14 parking spaces where 22 parking spaces are required, zoning code section 616, table 16B. The zoning board of appeals makes a recommendation to the city council, the determining body for this case.
Thank you.
Of note to the zoning board, this is the largest case that you have ever seen, and that is due to some fairly recent code changes that give some bonus dwelling units. So let's all bear together as we hear this case. You need to keep in mind that for this case, there are public benefits which change how you interpret some of the standards. So don't necessarily focus in on one variation. You need to look at the project more as a whole, more how plan developments are typically looked at. And feel free to ask me questions if you have issues with exactly how to wrap your head around this as we go. Thank you, guys.
Melissa, can I just ask you one thing? Did you say that we're a recommending body here still, right?
Yes, you are a recommending body because there is a parking variation for multifamily.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, sir, will you explain your project, please?
Sure. Melissa, is it possible for me to share my screen?
You're muted, Melissa.
Sorry. Yes, you should have a screen share button at the bottom of your screen that you can hit.
Yeah, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Hang on.
It looks green for me. Little share screen button.
Yeah, when I click on it, it says that it's disabled.
Hold on.
Okay, thank you. Maybe while we're transitioning, I'm happy to introduce some members of our team. I'm joined this evening by several of our partners, Tyler Quast with Blue Star Properties, and as well as my partners, John Searles and Bob Rehnquist, and then Alex Gauza and Brian Phillips from ISA. Our architects are also on. I'll introduce each firm momentarily. Let's see if.
Mr. Dillian, in the interest of saving time, you can introduce your team while Melissa still works on the screen share.
Sure. Let me just minimize this. So I'll introduce a little bit about our team, and unfortunately I have some visuals, but we can fly through those momentarily. But here we go. Okay, now I should be able to do this. Bear with me 1 second. Hold on 1 second. All right, thank you for your pardon as I work through that. Here we go. So we're introducing a project proposal for 1101 Church Street. As I mentioned, I want to introduce really sort of a consortium of development partners that have come together. As I mentioned, I'm joined by Bob Rehnquist, Rehnquist Development. My name is Chris Dillian. As Melissa mentioned, my company is Campbell Coyle. And we also team regularly with John Searles from Jody Development. And in this case, we're also teaming with Blue Star Properties, Tyler Quast and Craig Golden. Craig is an Evanston resident and also a business owner of several prominent businesses in Evanston. We're really thrilled with the team that we've assembled. In general, I would say sort of the theme that unites all of our projects across all of the companies involved is really dedication and commitment to design. We've got several notable projects, primarily throughout Chicago. We also recently completed a similarly scaled project in the village of Oak Park. I'm proud to say that we were told by the village that this was the fastest planned development approved in the village of Oak Park. And I think what I hope everyone recognizes and sees this evening is that we're really aiming to be contextual and really sort of trying to be modest in scale and sort of do the right thing. So that is very much intentional. The one thing that sort of unites all of us, as I mentioned, is a commitment to design. And in this case, we have a long track record of working with ISA out of Philadelphia. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian and Alex just to briefly introduce ISA in some of their work. Brian, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so as Chris mentioned, I'm Brian Phillips, a principal at ISA. Alex Gause is on as our studio director and also is heading up the project for our team. And we've been doing a lot of work here in Philly, but also around the country in Detroit, Chicago, Boston, some other places, and really all the work I think is looking to create sort of infill projects that kind of urbanize blocks, focus on being pedestrian friendly, support the urban amenities around them, and really become a good neighbor to their home cities. These are just a couple of examples of a project here on the left that we did in the Logan Square section of Chicago that really was this sort of, I think, missing middle housing project where sort of mid-range townhouse development that really was sort of hitting this kind of contemporary design note, but also providing sustainable, good everyday housing. And on the right, just an example of something recently we've done here in Philly, just sort of dealing with the context and again being aware of its environment, and I think respectfully fitting in. I don't know if we have any other images here, Chris. Yeah, so we've also been looking at what we're thinking of as leftover sites. There's these are both, the building on the right is 12 feet wide and the building on the left is actually 11 feet wide. These were both sites that were sort of looked over by previous development teams, and really look to again just sort of invigorate the fabric with these special infill opportunities, and really looking hopefully to be able to do that with our project here at Evanston. We have a long track record with adaptive reuse. This is a warehouse building that we sort of reuse as apartments, and then you can see some new construction in that left image. You can see some new construction to the right of the old warehouse, and so this sort of combination of new and old things coming together, certainly a strength of the practice. Here's another example of that with some new construction between some existing buildings that has become a mixed use office and apartment project.
So why don't I pick it up from there, Brian? Yep. I think one of the things that makes us so excited about working with ISA is they really excel in that missing middle context and typology. So really sort of the gap between single family homes and your traditional apartments. And so we're really excited and thrilled to present our concept for 1101 Church. And just in terms of site context, we're talking about the northwest corner, of Church Street in Oak Avenue. The site is transit rich. It's immediately proximate to the Metro and the CTA. It's also at a really unique location. We really see this as a unique gateway opportunity on Church Street. It's really just sort of a stone's throw away from the heart of downtown Evanston. And in a real sense, the context surrounding it is very urban. despite its residential zoning district. And we'll talk through that in a little bit. There's also some unique opportunities here, and I really commend ISA for encouraging us to think about really saving the church, the Sojourner Covenant Church. It's not a historic landmark. It certainly has value from a cultural perspective and sort of historic value. And more recently, we've been doing a series of these projects where we've been converting religious facilities. We've done two very recently in Chicago's Logan Square neighborhood. And we're really excited by both the opportunities and candidly the challenges inherent with adaptive reuse. And so we're really thrilled to present that this evening. And so just to kind of summarize what we're talking about here, within the church, we are envisioning really what we consider townhome style living. So this will be units that are situated on either 2 or 3 floors, so more vertical in nature. These will also be larger units, so they will cater generally to, we envision, small families, young professionals, maybe even older professionals as well. All of our projects right now, we're thinking about the last year and what everybody's gone through, and obviously here we are in a zoning context, meeting remotely, so thinking about how that influences what we do and how we're thinking about the built environment in the future. And then, of course, we think a lot about sustainability. We think about our connection to the natural environment, really prioritizing that through our projects as well. And then to the north, and I'll get into the project itself in just a moment, we're envisioning an urban apartment building. This will be contextual, as I mentioned earlier. It'll be smaller in scale, and we're really trying very purposefully to be something a little bit different. This project will be developed at a different price point by being intentionally a little bit more smaller and contextual. And we ultimately hope that we can deliver or pass through some of that value back to the ultimate residents, and proportionately reduced rents relative to some of the other more recent projects in Evanston. And so we really want to be sort of a counterpoint to a lot of the large scale development, knowing that not everybody wants that, not everybody can necessarily always afford that. And so we want to do something a little bit different. And so in this case, we're talking about 1 beds and 2 bed units, approximately 550 to 1,100 square feet. And again, outdoor connectivity, we're looking at a really innovative green roofing system that we've actually had success with in several other contexts. And we're really excited about the potential. One of the biggest challenges for this site from both a zoning perspective as well as just an architectural perspective is its shape. It's actually an L-shaped site. So just to orient everyone, in this case, Church Street is over here on the left, Oak Avenue is on the bottom of the page. You've got the church building here, and then you have what is currently an existing parking lot on the balance of the site, accessed off of an alley. And just for context, to the right here, which would be to the north, are the Sienna condominiums. And so in this case, we're looking at an adaptive reuse of the existing church on this portion of the site. And then we're looking at really sort of, again, a small infill, contextual, mid-rise project, new construction component that would exist where that surface parking lot exists today, as well as, I should say, the old parsonage building that is immediately adjacent, sort of to the rear of the church. We mentioned earlier a little bit about the unit mix, but overall, we're talking about kind of an interesting distribution, certainly a little bit more heavily weighted on 2 and 3 bedrooms. We certainly will have a significant number of 1 beds. Those are obviously very much in demand in Evanston right now. And so we are closely monitoring both the supply and demand dynamics in the market, but we're also looking at delivering something different. The other unique thing about this project is that all of the 2 bedrooms, with the exception of 1, will actually be distributed over 2 floors. And so our thesis here is that by delivering something different that is not consistent with what everybody else is doing, we believe that we're going to deliver something a little bit more unique that people find interesting. So just real quick in terms of kind of massing, again, the church component over here, those are all 2 and 3 bed units, larger units. Then you see the new construction component on the right here. There is a parking area that is partially covered that is accessed off of the alley. One of the unique things about this, you can see we've added in some green space. We've actually reduced the impervious lot coverage on this project, though we are looking for a building coverage variation. And so we'll get into that in a moment. The other thing that we've recently done, we've really sort of tried to elevate the bike storage in the project, immediately accessible off of the front of the building. We see kind of a unique opportunity there. We, following some of the comments that we got at Dapper, we saw a great opportunity to really kind of celebrate that and make that sort of core to the values that the project sort of expresses. And so we're excited by the potential there. As we work up in the building, you can see that the gap between the new construction component and the church is a little bit more noticeable here. So there's actually a little bit of outdoor space. And I won't get too far into the weeds here on the floor plans, but there is basically a 4th floor with some areas that are popped up onto the 5th floor, which is also shared with a roof deck that will really feature a very unique green roofing system that is developed and sort of a proprietary system with a Chicago-based company. And if we have time, I have some photos of that as well. Here's a quick rendering of the view. This is the Sienna building. So we're on Oak here. This is the existing alley. So you can see, and unfortunately the trees have sort of concealed it a little bit, but the church is here on the left, and then the new construction component on the right. We do have some additional content prepared on the materiality of the building, et cetera, but I know one of the main focuses for this evening is on the variations. So we put that sort of in the appendix, and we're happy to circle back if there are questions. Just in terms of the massing and sort of how it is situated on the site, this is obviously looking at the south elevation. So this is looking north. So you can see the Sienna condominiums here beyond this site. You can also see the office building to our east. So obviously to the right, you will sort of head into downtown Evanston. The sort of view from Church Street will really be consistent. There are 2 single-family homes immediately adjacent, which we're happy to talk more directly to if there's some desire to. And and then in general, as I mentioned, sort of that facade will stay roughly the same, obviously with the building behind it set back. The view along Oak, so this is looking west down Church Street. This is the west elevation. And then we've got the north elevation from the alley. And then this is the east elevation. So you can kind of see that open parking area. We're looking for a series of variations. And what I've tried to do is summarize those in as much as we can and with graphics to sort of break those down. So we can circle back to this summary page if it's helpful, but let me just kind of run through those briefly. The first variation is a density variation. We've basically proposed 30 units on the site. Really, the zoning allows for 15 units. And so what we have done is we're proposing 24 units, but then there are 6 bonus units because we're proposing to do 3 affordable housing units on site. And so as of right now, we've been engaged with the city, and we're talking about 2 1-bed units and 1 2-bed unit that would be the affordable units within the project. We're also looking for a variation on lot coverage. As I mentioned, we were pleasantly surprised, I guess, to say that we didn't need a variance for impervious coverage because we actually reduced what exists today. but we are looking for a variance on the lot coverage. One of the interesting things, because of the way that the garage is structured at grade, we have 62% coverage. So we're really kind of talking about this area here above the ground floor, and we're proposing 78.6%. There are 2 setback variations that are requested as a part of our proposal. The first is right here along Oak Avenue. And really what we're trying to accomplish here is we're looking to extend this street wall that exists today with the church. We're looking to extend that consistent with the new construction component. You could see that as the zoning requires a setback here of 15 feet. So this is an approximation of what that would sort of look like. And then off the alley, we're also looking for a setback variance here. We're proposing a 1.5 foot setback, so that's fairly modest, but you can see that if we adhered to the 25 foot setback, we would be left with a very sort of odd shape. And this is really indicative of just kind of the unique constraints and challenges with the shape of the site. And as I mentioned, I think our view is that this really is sort of on the cusp of the downtown area, or it really feels urban, and it is part of the urban fabric of downtown, even though it's a residential district. And so the proposal and the concept here is really in keeping with the immediately adjacent buildings. And so we thought that it was appropriate. And then there are 2 variations relating to parking. And so by code, we are required to provide 22 parking spaces. And as you can see here, we're providing 8 parking spaces. And the 2 variations, one, there's a setback requirement for parking. And so we're looking to basically eliminate that setback. This is really in keeping with the condition of this lot. It's all paved currently today. And this is all parking today. But then beyond that, we're also looking to reduce the total number of parking spaces required for the site. So we're proposing the 8 on site. And then as was outlined in the package, we are suggesting leasing 6 off-site parking spaces with the city as well. Just in terms of public impact, and then I'll touch briefly on public benefits, but I think some of the key moves here that we think have a tremendous impact on the local economy and on the city. One, we think that there's real value in saving the church, and that wasn't our sort of going in assumption. Our going in assumption was that the constraints or challenges associated with saving it would make it very difficult for us to find a pathway to making the deal viable. But we were able to, and we were, as I mentioned, I really credit ISA with sort of inspiring that approach here, because I think it really is appropriate and something that we think we can celebrate that building and breathe new life into it. And I think that we're excited by both that opportunity and challenge. 2, this is a property that has been off the tax rolls historically. And so we've worked with our property tax attorney and estimate the stabilized real estate taxes at approximately $135,000 per year. So it's a significant increase. And then obviously, anytime there's additional residents and people visiting and living adjacent to downtown Evanston, we really believe that that will contribute to the vitality of the downtown area. And we're thrilled by the opportunity to develop this asset and to bring new residents. And really, as I mentioned earlier, deliver something a little bit different. In terms of public benefits, we're still working through these with the city, and very much, I think, trying to strike a very collaborative tone on how we will arrive at kind of the ultimate list of public benefits. But here's just kind of a snapshot on where we are right now and where I think we're headed. One, it's very important, as we've learned with engaging our surrounding neighbors, to look at alley resurfacing. And so in this case, we're talking about resurfacing a little bit beyond the area just immediately adjacent the project. That alley is currently in fairly rough condition. And so that's, as I mentioned, has been expressed by several of the surrounding landowners. We're also looking at incorporating bird-friendly measures. This is really, I think, part of, and the mayor's monarch proclamation as well, part of our broader sustainability agenda for the project. We're really excited about the opportunities we have here to do some really interesting and exciting things from a sustainability perspective. As I mentioned, the green roof system that we're incorporating, we're really thrilled about. We think it's going to create a very unique environment, not only for at-risk insects and things of that sort, but also create something unique that the building residents and even people in the vicinity are going to be able to see and appreciate. We're also looking at a transit fund contribution. This is consistent with the values of the project and seeking the variation on parking. We really are going to be targeting residents that both sort of live and breathe the values that we hope this project also expresses. And so the transit connectivity is really key to our kind of entire approach here. ADA and adaptable affordable units. There are a number of residents in the immediate vicinity with disabilities. And so we've had a lot of dialogue with those residents and other stakeholders. And we've identified that when you look at the affordable units and the 60% AMI threshold in Evanston, there are still, unfortunately, this is a number of people that still have needs that are not being met. And so we're looking very creatively at how we deliver our residential affordable units to satisfy the IHO requirement, but also really thinking more broadly on how we maybe start to address other needs in the community that aren't being met just with a more conventional approach. And so we're excited by that opportunity. Then lastly, both local hiring and also hiring of minority and female business enterprises, as well as Evanston businesses as well. We are committed to incorporating local residents both into the construction of the project, as well as looking beyond that into the operations of the project. And we are also excited by the opportunity of incorporating minority and female business enterprises, again, both in construction as well as we think into the future. We're also actively starting to, identify subcontractors and other folks that we would engage as a part of our construction process, and really excited to bring folks on that can fulfill that promise. So with that, as I mentioned, we do have some additional material on the building design itself, as well as some other appendix material, but I will, I guess, turn it over to the chair for questions.
Okay, questions, anybody? Does anyone have questions for this respondent? If anybody from the audience would like to speak, please put your name and address in the chat.
I would just like a clarifying question that the building directly to the north, I think it's the Sienna, does not use the alley directly across from your site. Is that correct? They have a curb cut off of Oak.
Is that correct, sir?
I don't recall if they use the alley. I will say that their building services are all fed through that alley in terms of utilities. I don't recall, I think they do have a curb cut off of Oak, but they did, when I engaged with the condo board president, he specifically cited the alley condition as one of their key issues. So regardless of whether they maybe access it for their parking or not, it clearly was front of mind for them.
There aren't any garage openings or on that alley side of that building.
You're confirming that, Max?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I believe the garage is open onto Oak. Any other questions?
I do have a question about the setback that's being sought on that same alley. Maybe can city staff perhaps comment on precedent for setbacks in an alley like this, because it does seem pretty close, and it's up and down that entire alley. This would be, having a setback that short would be atypical, because there's other spots along the entire alley where one side or the other is open, either for plowing or for any other kind of consideration. Melissa, can you comment on that at all?
Sure. In a typical residential district setting, I agree that would be highly unusual for such a large rear yard setback request. However, in this instance, because it's adjacent to the downtown and adjacent to multi-story buildings, I believe Kitty Corner is even a 17-story building. For that reason, I do think it's appropriate. It actually creates a buffer from the less dense residential that's further west.
Thank you.
Carol, did you have a question? Your hand was up earlier.
No, thank you.
You didn't? Okay. Mary?
I have no questions. I read the packet, and your presentation, I think, was exceedingly thorough. So no, there are a lot of still what ifs on the public benefits that you're working on with the city, which I appreciate. And otherwise, I think it's a spectacular project, frankly.
Is there anyone from the audience that would like to question the respondent? Anyone here? Okay, I guess not. So have we received any letters of support, or we have?
Thank you, Chair Cullen. Just to note for the record, in the email that I sent before the meeting, there were a couple of public comments within that.
Okay, were they for or against?
I believe both. One comment was a report of findings from Design Evanston, who has given their stamp of approval on the design.
Okay, that's great.
The other was from a neighbor. I'm sorry, the other was from a neighbor, I think maybe in one of the two flats immediately to the west of this project. And they were not in favor of this going forward. And I think, I can certainly understand that, noting that the parking lot, which will be used as part of the building, has been used for the last many years as a recreational, kind of like alley basketball area, which is great. But, times change.
They definitely do. I see that the notes from Dapper are talking about asking you to lease additional parking spaces at the Maple Avenue garage. Had you considered that?
Yes, that is correct. Yes, we're very much receptive to that.
How many would you lease?
I think our goal has always been to build consensus, both with Melissa and her team, as well as with the aldermen. I know that the number 6 was outlined in the packet, and I believe that is somewhat consistent with some of the other precedents recently from a multifamily perspective. But ultimately, I think there's a degree of flexibility on our side.
And how many would that bring your total to?
That would bring the total to 14.
14, okay. Also, they're talking about replacing the sidewalk?
That's correct.
Had you agreed to do that?
Yes. We have agreed to replace the sidewalk and really sort of reevaluate the streetscape. One of the other things that was mentioned with several of the surrounding property owners was just the condition of the streetscape, as well as its sort of ADA accessibility. So we're going to be looking into both of those issues as we look to reestablish something. We've engaged Chicago-based landscape design firm Omni Ecosystems. They'll be doing both the green roof system as well as all of the at-grade improvements.
Are they going to be doing the monarch butterfly thing at the side of the parking lot?
Yes. As well as the green roof system also will incorporate habitat for monarch butterflies.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, since there are no questions from the audience, I'm going to close the record and we are going to talk about the special use standards. Again, I think we're taking roll, right, Melissa?
I think so. Variation standards. So there's a few less of them, but yeah, let's do roll call for each one.
Yeah, let's do a roll call for it. Okay. First of all, let's hear what everyone has to say about this project now that I've closed the record. I'm going to go first. My favorite thing about this is that it will go from a non-taxable church to $136,000 a year in tax revenue for the city of Evanston. I want to believe in my heart that one day my taxes will go down because of contributions like this. So I agree with this proposal. I think it's lovely.
I'm also in favor of this proposal. I think that in particular, the side setback would do nothing to benefit the project, and in fact would take away from the attractiveness and use of the project. I'm a little bit iffy about the rear setback, but you know, in light of comments from the city, I'm fine with that. I think the heights and the massing are a good transition from the new building that has already occurred to the north of the site and that continues to occur now, and moving south across Church Street to a more lower heights. I think this is a good transition zone. And just from a personal perspective, I think it's a very attractive, interesting design that complements the Evanston cityscape well.
Thank you, Joe.
I will join the comments. First, I would commend the architects because this is a really difficult project. So they did a great job. Good for you guys. The one thing that I would like to see, just personal opinion, and it's different from what Evanston Design wrote in their comments, I would like to see a little bit more residential touch to the church. It's still a church, but you guys will do this, I'm sure, in the next phase, so that it is just a little bit. I'm still the proponent of the honest architecture from inside out. So maybe because I'm old, but that's my comment. The other thing, if you commit to additional parking spaces leased, this will be really good. So I would stay with the proposal from Dapper for additional lease of parking spaces. Otherwise, it's a great project and I will support it. Thank you.
Mr. Dillion, that's high praise from our architect board member. And he's not
Thank
old.
you.
You couldn't be old. I'm not old.
And I would comment, Carol, that I think it's fabulous that they have maintained Sojourner Church to still kind of look like Sojourner Church. I mean, I really love church adaptive reuse developments that maintain that ecclesiastical appearance. I just think it gives it so much interest. So I'm happy with the preservation of that building. And I think that the creative wrapping with the new building is really wonderful. And I agree that it is totally in scale to its location. So I back it all the way.
Is that everybody? Go ahead, Max.
I'll echo support. I think all the same compliments. It's very creative and it's skillful and it's a creative solution for a challenging spot. Given the size of the buildings around it, I actually think that this solution is pretty modest. And they probably even could have been more ambitious, but I won't say that. Even more loud. So I'm in support.
All right, so I am going to head and go through the variations, but I am going to tell you that there are some conditions that are recommended. One, a construction management plan is required prior to the issuance of a building permit for this. Two, the applicants will continue to work with city staff to establish appropriate public benefits, the ones we've heard here tonight, for example. Three, LEED Silver or equivalent is required in compliance with the Green Building Ordinance for this project. 4, 6 off-street parking spaces are required. 5, rooftop mechanicals shall feature sound attenuating devices or shall be screened to limit noise pollution. 6, the applicant shall provide on-site affordable housing for the following 30 years in compliance with the inclusionary housing ordinance. And 7, substantial compliance with the documents and testimony on record. The applicant presented the development at the second ward meeting in February and has continued to work with adjacent property owners, including the Sienna residents, to address concerns that include rooftop building lighting and alley improvements. And city staff is not aware of any objections to the proposal until the one tonight for the basketball court. So we will now go through the special use standards.
And with that, I revised my earlier statement. We can do voice votes on these because you guys are all going to say the same thing. And additionally, the motion, feel free to say that whoever makes the motion that you are motioning it with the conditions listed in the staff memo, and then you can add in anything else that you want.
Okay. For a variation to be recommended for approval, the ZBA must find that the proposed variation, 1, will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. The existing vacant structures are showing signs of deterioration. The proposed moderate density development will serve as an appropriately massed step to the adjacent downtown area, and it will serve as a buffer for the low intensity 2 flats immediately to the west. So are we doing roll call or just voice?
Just go with voice.
Okay, all in favor of that standard being met?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Number 2, is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. The proposed development promotes the general health, morals, general welfare, and objectives of the comprehensive general plan. The adaptive reuse of the religious structure is commendable and significant, and the private ownership of the property returns it to the taxable base. All in favor of that standard being met?
Aye.
Aye. Any proposed? Okay. Number 3, has a hardship or practical difficulty that is peculiar to the property. The existing structure that is adaptively reused features legally non-conforming setbacks and lot coverage. That, in combination with the odd lot shape, makes it impossible to comply with all the zoning requirements while also allowing for an appropriate density. All that agree that the standard has been met? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, 4, property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience. Without the requested zoning relief, the 4-story new construction building is not feasible, which makes this adaptive reuse of the religious structure economically infeasible. I agree that this standard has been met. Who else is in agreement?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. 5, is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property or public benefit from the whole will be derived. This development is intended to extract income from the property. The applicant and staff continue to work towards a list of public benefits that include but are not limited to milling and resurfacing half of the alley after construction, a 2-bedroom inclusionary housing unit that is ADA adaptable, bird-friendly glass and design, landscaping to the mayor's Monarch Pledge, a $5,000 transit fund contribution, and local and minority hiring. I believe that this standard has been met with the public benefits that are proposed. Who is in agreement?
Aye.
Aye.
You're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm in agreement, but my understanding is that the public benefit will include potentially the 2-bedroom ADA adaptable unit plus 2 other units. Is that correct?
That's
Okay,
correct.
great.
Right, it just wasn't put on that standard, but you're correct.
Right, just want to make sure that it's 3.
Yes, it is
Okay.
3. Okay, number 6, does not have a hardship or practical difficulty that was created by any person having an interest in the property. The property was platted at its size and width prior to the current ownership. The odd lot shape and corner property setbacks reduced the building envelope to an amount substantially lower than the surrounding properties and not appropriate immediately adjacent to the downtown. I believe that standard has been met. Who all
Great.
agreed? Any opposed? Okay, number 7 is limited to the minimum change necessary to alleviate the particular hardship or practical difficulty. The applicant has worked to modify the proposal to minimize the necessary zoning relief. 10% on-site inclusionary housing is included, the 3 units, to take advantage of the applicable zoning bonuses to further reduce the necessary zoning relief. The proposal purposefully does not maximize building height and bulk, which could extend to 85 feet and 8 stories. The conditions for approval. The applicant worked extensively with staff to develop a moderate density residential building while also adaptively reusing an existing unique structure. The requested variations are appropriate when considering the location of the property, existing conditions, and surrounding density and bulk of the adjacent downtown. The applicant will continue to work with city staff to finalize public benefits. And with that, I say that this standard has been met. Board?
Great.
Yes, any opposed? Okay. I need somebody to make the motion, and I have a list of the conditions to help you.
I move in the case of, what's the address?
1101, isn't it?
1101 Church Street, Evanston, that we recommend approval to city council contingent on the contingencies listed in the DAPR staff report.
And the conditions include?
Well, I can read them to you if you want, but Melissa said it would be okay just to put that in. Let me read them to you. Oops. Glasses. Those
Okay.
Conditions include comprehensive management plan is required prior to issuance of the building permit, that the applicant will continue to work with the city staff to establish appropriate public benefits. Many of those have been discussed, but they will be defined with further work with the city, that you will build to LEED Silver or equivalent in compliance with the Green Building Ordinance, that you will lease a minimum of 6 off-site parking spaces, that the rooftop mechanical shall feature sound attenuating devices or shall be screened to limit noise pollution, and that the applicant shall provide on-site affordable housing, 3 units minimum, including a 2-bedroom ADA adaptable unit for 30 years in compliance with the inclusionary housing ordinance, and that that you will complete this in substantial compliance with the documents and testimony that are on record here.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Dillian, your motion has been passed.
All right, thank you very much.
Melissa, for next steps, thank you so much for appearing tonight.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You
Thanks,
too.
everybody.
Same to you.
Okay, everybody, that went well. Now we are down to talking about our next meeting. When is it going to be?
Well, there's the joint plan commission ZBA meeting, and I will not be in attendance for
And when is
that.
that, Melissa?
That is next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. At 7?
It is at 7. I'm guessing the whole case will probably wrap around 9:30 because it's kind of like two cases. The first half will be for the Plan Commission for their portion, and then the second half will be for you guys.
Oh, wow. I thought we were first. Okay. All right. Anything else we need to talk about?